The Nike Pegasus 41 and the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, two of the best, more traditional daily trainers that you can buy right now, but which one you're going to prefer is going to come down to a couple key preferences. As always, let's jump into the specs. Starting with the Nike Pegasus 41, we have 37 mil of foam in the heel, 27 mil of foam in the forefoot, giving you a 10 mil drop. Now, according to Running Warehouse, the weight of this shoe is 9.9 ounces or 283 grams, but I'll get to this in a moment, and that's for the US men's size 9 reference size that everyone uses. In the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, we actually have 36 mil of foam in the heel, 26 mil of foam in the forefoot, giving you a 10 mil drop. The weight of this shoe is 9.5 ounces or 268 grams, again from Running Warehouse and for the US men's size 9 reference size. Now, these two shoes actually look significantly different as far as stack heights. But what is setting these two apart is that there's a lot more sidewalls and support built up into the midsole of the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, which makes the midsole look much thicker on that shoe than it does in the Pegasus. The Pegasus really doesn't have any sidewalls other than around the heel, but really nothing in the forefoot, whereas the Velocity Nitro 3 has them pretty much all the way around the shoe except for a little section in the toe area of the shoe. Now, going back to the Nike Pegasus 41, it has Nike's new React X midsole foam, which again is React foam just with a different manufacturing process that gives it a more airy, more cushioned, more bouncy feel. And you definitely feel that in this generation of Pegasus. We still have two Zoom Air units in the forefoot and heel. And I would say this is a very traditional geometry and ride. It's a very flat, stable, wide feeling shoe. It's very nice. The Puma Velocity Nitro 3 is using two layers of foam. The first that's right under the foot is Puma's Nitro foam. It's their TPEE version of that foam, which is very similar to Adidas's Lightstrike Pro. However, the Nitro foam is tuned a little bit differently. It's not quite as resilient, doesn't have quite as much rebound. It's a little bit more stable, but for a training application, it's quite a bit better. And then there is an EVA carrier below that, which is pretty firm and really stiffens out the shoe. But again, in a training application, it works quite well. Overall, the Velocity Nitro 3 ride is very firm and very stable, and it has a mild forefoot rocker, and I think that's there because of the stiffness of the platform overall, but I would still count this as a more traditional geometry shoe. Going over the weights really quickly, this is where the weights differ a little bit. In the pair of Nike Pegasus 41s that I actually bought, my left shoe weighs 277 grams and my right is 279 grams, which is considerably below the spec from Running Warehouse or from Nike specifically. So this shoe is running quite a bit lighter in my US men's size 9, which again is the reference size, than what the manufacturers are actually saying. In the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, I get 263 grams on the left, 264 grams on the right. It is a lighter shoe. I will say when you pick it up, it does feel lighter than the Pegasus. However, on foot, it isn't that much more noticeable how much lighter it actually is. Moving to the outsoles of these two shoes, I think these two shoes represent probably the best two full rubber outsoles that you can get on a traditional daily trainer right now. They are both exceptional. Starting with the Nike Pegasus 41, we have 11.2 centimeters at the widest point in the forefoot, 6.5 in the waist, and 8.7 centimeters in the heel of the shoe. In the Velocity Nitro 3, we have 10.4 centimeters at the widest point in the forefoot, 6.5 in the waist, and 8.4 centimeters at the widest point in the heel. Now, I'm going to say that the Nike feels like the much more stable shoe. Not only is it wider in the forefoot and heel, but you also feel much lower to the ground. And I think the much simpler rubber outsole pattern on this shoe just makes this shoe feel flatter and more stable. Not in a slappy way, it's just a shoe that gives you a lot of confidence to really dig into the ground. That being said, the Puma Velocity Nitro 3 is still, I would consider, a very stable shoe. It is a slightly narrower platform, and because the foam is firmer in this shoe, you do feel like you're up on a platform much more than the Pegasus, but this shoe still is a very stable shoe, even with the slightly more narrow footprint of the shoe. Now, looking at the outsole pattern, as I said, these are two of the best ones you can possibly get. I actually think the outsole pattern on the Pegasus 41 is slightly better because it's just simpler. That hook around the heel gives you a soft section in the heel that makes heel striking in the shoe very nice. However, the rubber structures the heel, centers the foot, and brings you into that big, flat, single piece of rubber in the forefoot of the shoe, which is great. Again, the Pegasus 41 is a very stable, very neutral, very confidence-inspiring ride. The Velocity Nitro 3 is also very good. The pattern is very good, but I think what sets the Velocity Nitro 3 apart is the Puma Grip compound. This rubber compound on this shoe, the Puma Grip compound, is exceptional. It grips in anything, wet, dry. I've run this on trails, dirt, track. It is exceptionally good at what it does, and it grips on everything. I've never had any sort of footing problems with the Velocity Nitro 3. Both of these outsoles are exceptional, and you really can't go wrong with either one. Moving to the fit and feel of these two shoes, and starting with the Nike Pegasus 41, I'm going to say this is the much more accommodating fit between these two shoes. The engineered mesh upper on this shoe is much more lightweight and much more conforming to the foot. The fiber that this engineered knit is made out of is very reminiscent of older Nike Flyknit material, meaning it's very soft and it wraps around the foot very well. The midfoot lockdown and the heel lockdown in this shoe are exceptional, continuing the great lockdown from the previous generation, the Nike Pegasus 40. And the forefoot of this shoe, I'm going to say, is wide-ish. This is not a wide shoe, but because of the extra width in this platform, this, again, the contact patch in the forefoot of the shoe is fairly wide. So there is a big platform in the front of the shoe, and with this really conforming upper to the foot, I'm going to say that the forefoot feel of this shoe is very accommodating. Now, as I said, this is not a wide shoe, but if you have a foot that is kind of borderline between standard and wide, you may want to try this one in a standard width because you may be okay. Now, as far as volume in the forefoot of this shoe, I'm not having any issues with this. Some people are saying that there is low volume in this forefoot, especially in the toe area. I'm not noticing that, or I'm not noticing anything that is significantly different than a typical Nike fit. So if Nike shoes typically give you a constricted feel in the forefoot, this one's going to be no different. But otherwise, I think this is probably the much more accommodating upper that I think more people are going to fit in more comfortably. Moving to the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, I'm going to say that this fit couldn't be any more different than the Nike Pegasus 41. This is a very long and narrow fit. The engineered mesh upper on this shoe is much more padded. There's just much more upper here. The material is much less conforming to the foot, though it's still a very comfortable upper. It's just in hotter climates like what I have to run here in Taipei, Taiwan, this upper can get very warm. But in cooler temperatures, trail running, I think this is probably the more durable upper because, again, this shoe has over 100 miles on it, and I've had absolutely no problems with this upper. The heel in this shoe is very well padded. There should be no heel lip issues. And the eyelet chain in this shoe offers a really good lockdown, mostly because it's very long. Like I said, this shoe feels very long, but the way the fit feels in the midfoot of this shoe is it feels like the eyelet chain really is locking down the full length of your foot. Even though there's plenty of room in the toe, it just gives you a very secure fit. Now, as I said, this is a very narrow fit. Now, as I also said, I have a foot that's neither wide nor narrow, but it is high volume, but I'm not having any issues with the fit of this shoe. It fits my foot quite well. I don't have any sort of rubbing on the pinky toe. I don't have any sort of problems with my big toe. And I will say the volume in the forefoot of the shoe is much higher than the Pegasus, but that's, I think, a standard Puma toe volume as well. The base of the eyelet chain and in the toe area, I've had absolutely no toe issues with this shoe. And moving to the feel on foot of these two shoes, with the Nike Pegasus 41, I'm going to say that this is the much more flatter, lower to the ground option. Even though the stack height is very similar in this shoe compared to the Velocity Nitro 3, this shoe just feels very low to the ground. It feels much lower than the 27 mil of foam that's actually in the forefoot of the shoe. It feels low, it feels flat, it feels neutral, it feels stable, and this is a great shoe to really drive into the ground and toe off. I will also say that this is a much more flexible shoe than the Velocity Nitro 3, and the React X foam in this shoe overall is much softer and more cushioned. It's not spongy, and it's not soft like, say, Zoom X foam, but compared to the Nitro foam and the EVA in the Velocity Nitro 3, it is considerably more cushioned and softer feeling underfoot. And moving to the feel of the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, I'm going to say that this is a much more substantial shoe. Even though the stack height is actually 1 mil less than the Nike Pegasus 41, because the foams are firmer in the shoe, the Nitro foam and the EVA carrier underneath it, this shoe feels like there's just more shoe underfoot. You feel like you're up on a platform of foam. Not like a max cushion shoe. This is still a relatively low stack shoe, but you're just more on the foam than you are in the foam like you are in the Pegasus. Now, because it is still a relatively lower stack shoe, you still get decent ground feel and you're able to really dig into the forefoot of the shoe and drive off the toe. It's just this is a much firmer, much more substantial ride. Still very cushioned, but I think the firmness of this platform really adds to the versatility of this shoe for things like faster workouts, track workouts, and even trail running. So what's the verdict here? Which one of these is the better shoe? Well, this is where it gets a little tricky, and I think it really comes into perspective. If I am removing my bias from this review, because if you've watched anything on this channel, you know I love the Nike Pegasus, I'm going to have to say that the Puma Velocity Nitro 3 is the better option all around. Now, just because this is the better option doesn't mean that more often than not, this is the shoe I'm going to reach for and go out for a run in just because I prefer the feel of this shoe on foot. But if I'm recommending which one of these is probably the better buy and it's going to be more versatile and give you a lot more use out of it, it's hard to pass this up because this platform, this shoe is just so versatile. You can literally do anything in this shoe. It is good at easy runs. It's good at tempo workouts, threshold running. It's good at reps, like doing 400s, 800s, something like that on the road or track. I would pull this shoe out for a track workout if I didn't have any other option. Even if I did have other options, this is still a great track shoe. Trail running, this is probably the best road to trail shoe that's out there right now. And this rubber outsole and the Puma grip is exceptional on trails. And I'm not talking just dirt roads and buffed out trails. I have a lot of technical rocky trail here to run, and I've taken this shoe on it and I've had absolutely no problems. And I think that's where the firmness of this platform really comes in. For trail running, because this is a firmer platform, these firmer foams are protecting you from rocks, making this shoe viable for more technical trail running up and down. On a track, this shoe is going to be exceptional because it's going to give you a really powerful platform with a very modern super foam and this nitro foam that's really going to propel you forward. And for road running, really with anything, this is just going to do everything you need it to do for a daily trainer. You can even race in this shoe. Now, I prefer my super shoes, but if you're someone who wants to race in a more traditional shoe and maybe isn't ready to go back to the racing flats of old, this is a really great option because, again, you have a super foam in here, not tuned for energy return, more tuned for durability, but still it's a super foam. And this is a very, very viable shoe for really anything you want to do with it. But like I said, this is probably the shoe that personally I'm going to reach for more because I prefer the feel of this shoe. I like how much lower to the ground it is. It ticks most of the boxes that I need a daily trainer to do. It ticks all of them actually, but compared to the Velocity Nitro 3, this ticks most of them. The only thing that I don't think this one is as good at is for trail running, just because the React X is softer and you have the airbags in there. Airbags and rocks don't really go well together. So while this is totally competent on trail running, I would more stick with this shoe on dirt roads or kind of light gravel paths, not really technical trail. You could do it, I just wouldn't really recommend it. But for a track workout, for any sort of easy running to long running to workouts on the road, totally fine. Even racing, I probably wouldn't race in this shoe. Again, I have super shoes for that, but I would consider this for maybe a 5 or 10K, especially if I'm going very casual. However, I do think this is going to be your better racing option if you're looking for sort of a one shoe to do it all from training through racing. This is going to be the best bet. And this is really where you can't go wrong with either one of these shoes. I love both of these shoes dearly, and I'm really just saying this is the better shoe just because it's a little bit more modern. You can usually find it for a little bit cheaper than the Pegasus, and I just think it's a little bit more versatile. It's a little bit more modern. It's almost like if Nike didn't have 41 generations of the Pegasus to go back on, and they started again with a blank sheet of paper and they're going to make a more traditional daily trainer, I bet they would come up with something like this, very similar to what Puma came up with. But you can't go wrong with this shoe. It's exceptional. And for how much you can find this shoe for, because you can always find a sale or a discount on this shoe, it is hard to pass up for a very traditional, do-it-all daily trainer. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.